Hello and welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James. Guys, we're going to talk the captaincy debate today over all the stories that are doing the rounds. We'll get to that. We're also going to talk about how Aberdeen are being absolute buffoons yet again over the Connor Barron tribunal or the Connor Barron compensation fee. And we're also going to talk a little bit as well about Danilo, who is back in training and who else was back in Rangers pre-season training. A couple of faces that we probably didn't want to see back on the training ground in Rangers training tops and training kits. So let's start off by talking a little bit of Connor Barron before we talk about the Tav Butland captaincy debate, which all kicked off last night during the England-Slovenia game, which I was streaming. So Connor Barron obviously is a Rangers player. He was out of contract. His contract expired May the 31st. As a free agent, he can talk to whatever club he wants. However, because he is a young player who has been fostered and been brought up by Aberdeen through their youth system, Aberdeen are due a compensation fee for the player. Now, if Connor Barron had headed out of Scotland, had gone down south, or had gone to Italy, for example, Aberdeen would have been due a fee of around £525,000. £525,000. It's reported that Rangers offered Aberdeen £500,000 to secure the services as a compensation fee for Connor Barron, which, considering 525 and 500 initially, perhaps, then rising perhaps to 550 would probably not be that bad. And I think, more than reasonable from the club. However, Aberdeen have been Aberdeen, probably because the fact they are dealing with Rangers, said no to this fee and are ready to take Rangers to a tribunal in the hope of getting a lot more money and also perhaps some other add-ons to the deal as well. You can't help but feel that if this had been the other side of Glasgow, this would not be happening. And Aberdeen would have taken the $500,000 or the 525,000 or the 550,000, whatever. But because it's Rangers, they want to be difficult. They want to be as awkward as possible. They want to try and cause as much trouble as possible just because it is Rangers. Now, some people might say, well, you would say that, wouldn't you? You're just stirring it and whatever. Well, let's look at the past history. Let's just look at Aberdeen, shall we? Whenever Aberdeen play Rangers, they turn into prime Barcelona, prime Real Madrid. Whenever they play Celtic, they tend to lay down and die. They've always hated us. A number of people have said, analysts, fans, etc., ex-players all say that when it comes to playing Rangers, that's Aberdeen's Super Cup final, their European Champions League final. They cheat their fans, don't they, Aberdeen? They do. They cheat their fans massively. If they played with the same intensity against other teams that they play against us with, they'd probably finish top three every single season. Now, their chief executive has had this to say about the situation. Burrows, I can't remember the names, who cares? Sheep Burrows has said, if there isn't an agreement between the two clubs, then we are fully prepared to go to a tribunal. It's our job to get the best value for any player, and we will try and do that with Connor Barron. Ideally, in all walks of life, we would like to avoid situations where you have to go to tribunals. But if we have to, we will. You can just sense it with that end of that sentence, can't you? But if we have to, we win because we're Aberdeen and we're awkward. Well, yeah, whatever. Just seriously, I mean, I hope the tribunal find, and actually give them a fee that's under 525,000. Just, such a thing is called cutting your nose off to spite your face. And let's face it, Aberdeen, let's hope they do it in this situation. It doesn't affect, obviously, Connor Barron joining Rangers. They can't block that because of the fact that, obviously, Barron has decided to sign with the club. He is a free agent. I think if there was a situation where the transfer fee or the compensation fee was set at such a ridiculous level that it would have affected Barron's ability to join the club, you would then, I think, have a new set of court cases around these compensation fees with restraint of trade, with modern slavery, etc., over the players being able to do what they want when they're out of contract. So, I think the situation is very much that Barron obviously will be a Rangers player. There's nothing that Aberdeen can do, even if they want to stop him from joining the club. Okay, so what's kicked off? So last night it all kicked off, didn't it, as regards the captaincy of Rangers. Now, there was reports doing the rounds as regards Philippe Clement reportedly stripping James Tavernier of the captaincy. This is what the report of Daily Record and Football Scotland and a couple of the English papers went with, and they were reporting that, this was the intention. That's kind of cast doubt, didn't it, over Tav's future at the club. It was then stated that if James Tavernier, or when James Tavernier were left, or if with him being stripped of the captaincy, that Jack Butland would be named as the new captain of Rangers. Now, let's just look at this. I think it's a lot of speculation. I think it's a lot of media kind of stirring it a little bit. I think it's kind of a lot of the media putting all the rumours together, all the reports together. Now, there is, of course, the ongoing story as regards James Tavernier, Connor Barron going to Saudi to link up with former manager Steven Gerrard. That hasn't gone away. That isn't going away. And, I hope it goes through. I genuinely hope it goes through. I think Tav and Goldson have reached the end of their time at the club. I have been getting an awful lot of stick, particularly on TikTok, from Tav lovers, saying that we need to keep him next season, that he's one of our best players, that to lose him next season would be utterly ridiculous. The fact that he constantly digs us out of a hole, blah, blah, blah. But, overwhelmingly, the guy costs us a lot of goals. He's constantly targeted by opposition teams. His defending is piss poor. People talk about playing him in midfield. Well, would you really want to start him ahead of Oscar Cortez or ahead of, some of the wide players that have got some speed about them? Well, of course you wouldn't. You need an attack that is quick. Tavernier is not getting any quicker. He is not getting any better. He is getting old. And his body is obviously slowing down. And that can be seen. So Jack Butland being captain, I think, would be a very good move. Now, obviously, Jack Butland becomes captain. I think it sends a clear message that Jack Butland is going nowhere this summer, that he will still be a Rangers player next season, because you're not going to award the captaincy, strip the captaincy from one player, give it to someone else, and then 2 weeks later find that player's then left you, because that makes you look incredibly stupid. And certainly that is not something that I can ever see Philippe Clement doing. Now, what's the truth in this? At the moment, I don't know. I really don't think there's any truth, 100% truth in this. I think there's always the saying, there's no smoke without fire. And I think, personally speaking, that if Tav was to stay, unfortunately, I don't think he should, but if he did, then he shouldn't be captain next season. I challenge anyone to say that he should be captain, because he is not a leader. He is not a leader on the pitch. He does not, do the things that a leader should do on the pitch, which is inspire through words, through gestures, through, pulling the players together, speaking to players, organising players. That is not what Tav does. Tav is very self-overside. He's more an individual than a team member. And a captain is all got to be a team person. And that is very much what Jack Butland is. So for me, Tav is not a captain. He's one of the worst captains in Rangers history, in terms of his leadership skills. On the park, I don't think he's up to the job at all. So I do think that, at the end of the day, that if there is any truth in this, that it's a good thing for the club. It is a positive thing to get a captain like Jack Butland, someone who, inspires not only through his performances, he's outstanding, an outstanding player, but, also through his gestures, through the way he talks to the players. You can see him constantly communicating with players, telling them where he wants them, telling them where he wants them to run, telling them how he wants them to line up, telling them their marking strategies, etc., etc. He's always yelling and always organising. He's exactly what you need in a captain. Now, ideally, you would have a centre half or a centre midfielder as a captain, but at this moment in time, there is really nobody who can be a captain from the existing squad we've got. And if we're bringing lots of young players, you can't really make them captain. So Jack Butland is the obvious standout candidate from the present squad. And obviously, one of the players that under no circumstances Philippe Clement wants to lose unless a stupid bid comes in from an EPL club. So look, that's where we're up to. That's where we're at. That's what we understand. It'll run and run until the first day of the season, until the first games of the season, until pre-season, over this whole Tav story and Goldson story and the captaincy story. Ideal world, Tav and Goldson are gone, start next season. Butland is the captain. We've got a fresh start, a new start, a fresh team, a real fresh outlook, a real fresh drive. And we haven't got anyone here that is from that kind of leadership group that could be described as being serial bottlers, serial losers. Tav, Goldson, Barisic, Lundstrom, etc. Okay, let's move along a little bit now, and let's talk a little bit about Danilo Pereira. Danilo has been cited as being back in training. Obviously, he did some training before pre-season got underway. He was seen doing some work on his own on the grass, doing lots of running, getting involved with some ball skills, working with Rangers fitness staff, working with coaches, and getting himself back fit. And it's great to see that he is back on the park, and he's been playing, he's working hard, and he's moving in the right direction. It's really positive news to have him back. I think, there was a lot of criticism from some last season about some of the missed chances, but I think it's early days. You've got to give the player time to settle in. Last season he was unfortunate. He got two really bad injuries, the fractured cheekbone and then the knee injury that he got from a really bad tackle against Hearts. Neither of those injuries are his fault. It's not down to poor prep, poor strength and conditioning. It was down to hammer throwers basically taking him out, which is always the risk when you're a Rangers player. But it was great to see him back in pre-season training, back at Ockenhowie, working on the grass with Philippe Clement and the coaches. Now, Oscar Cortez was also back on the grass as well. He was side, obviously taking part in team sessions, taking part in ball sessions, working hard. So it's good to see that Oscar Cortez is back as well. Goldson and Cav were there. They've joined up with the squad for pre-season. I really was hoping they wouldn't. They'd be gone by the start of the season, but it is what it is. Obviously, we've got to keep them fit if we are going to sell them. But, it does seem that there was a real positive vibe to the beginning of the season and to the start of the season. Obviously, seeing Connor Barron there training as well. Really, really good. Really positive. I've got a real good feeling about Connor Barron as a player. He's one that I identified at the start of the set during last season. There's been a player that we should well be after. So, look. There's some good points. There's some bad points. There's some positives. There's some negatives. We're still early on in this pre-season. It's the 26th of June today. This club is moving in the right direction. It is very much so. We trust Coppin, we trust Clement, we believe in them and what they've got and the project they're putting together at Rangers. I really do believe, in this project, in what they're doing. Yes, there is a lot of dead wood that we need to get rid of. And I got a really interesting comment from someone yesterday, which was, it was around the Cyril Dessers story, which obviously, if you haven't heard it, check out the video that went out yesterday about Dessers going to Salonika in Greece. People say, well, there's about 6 or 7 I'd get rid of before him. Yeah, well, of course there is. The Scott Wrights of this world, the Tavs, the Goldsons, the Ben Davises, the players like that. Yeah, you would get rid of them. Kieran Dowells, Tom Lawrence's. But you can only get rid of what people are prepared, if they're under contract, if people are prepared to buy them. Realistically, a lot of these players are on very big wages and are not going to just want to leave. They're not stupid. Ben Davis, 20 grand a week. He's not going to want to walk out. Dessers, 28 grand a week, not going to want to walk out on that. So these guys are not going to just go. So you've got to have clubs that are going to come in and buy. Now, you may say, well, Dessers is way down the list of selling priorities, but the problem is that maybe nobody wants to buy Scott Wright. Nobody wants to buy James Tavernier. Nobody wants to buy Kieran Dowell. Nobody wants to buy Tom Lawrence. Nobody wants to buy Ravi Matondo. Nobody wants to buy these players. So at the end of the day, we can only kind of, if we're prepared to sell players, sell who people want to buy, the Yanis Hadjis of this world, the Cyril Dessers of this world. Those are the players that, at the moment are, getting interest from outside the club, from other clubs around Europe. And, that's where we're up to. And you can't really sit there and say, well, yeah, but let's get rid of Scott Wright first. Well, if no one wants him, what do? You're stuck with him until his contract runs out. That's just the world of football as it stands at this moment in time. Well, guys, thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation. As always, there's 2 favours I ask of you on the way out. Number 1, smash that like. Number 2, remember always, we are the people.